As the ceasefire takes effect and Israeli forces begin their partial withdrawal, a wave of people moves slowly back into Gaza's devastated neighborhoods. The sound of wheels scraping against broken concrete echoes through the streets, families returning not to homes, but to ruins. Among them are the wounded, many in wheelchairs, rolling through dust and debris. It is a stark reminder that while the fighting may have stopped, the struggle to heal has only just begun. The ceasefire, brokered in early October 2025 under US mediation led by President Donald Trump, has brought a fragile stillness to Gaza after 2 relentless years of war. The agreement calls for phased Israeli pullbacks, the return of hostages, and the release of Palestinian prisoners. For now, the guns are silent, and in that silence, Gaza's people are beginning the slow journey back to what remains of their lives. Everywhere, there are scenes of exhaustion and disbelief. Families drag their belongings in carts, children clutching the hands of parents who cannot hide their weariness. One woman, her clothes covered in dust, turns to the camera and says softly, "We are tired. Really, really, really tired. Thank God we're going back to Gaza City. And God help us. We hope things will be good in the city and we find a corner to live in." Her voice trembles with equal parts hope and despair. For many, there is nothing left to return to, only the idea of home, reduced to ashes and memories. The city that once pulsed with life now lies in ruins. Gaza City's skyline has been flattened. Khan Yunis, Rafah, Beit Lahia, names that once carried memories of markets, schools, and family gatherings, are now synonymous with rubble and mourning. According to the United Nations and health officials, more than 67,000 Palestinians have been killed during the war, most of them civilians. Another 169,000 have been injured, many permanently. Nearly a quarter of those wounded will require lifelong assistive technology, prosthetics, wheelchairs, braces, or specialized medical care. That's over 42,000 people, including more than 10,000 children, who will live with their injuries for the rest of their lives. At Al-Attar Hospital in Khan Yunis, the rehabilitation department is overwhelmed. In crowded rooms lined with metal beds and flickering lights, patients with spinal injuries, strokes, and neurological conditions wait their turn for therapy. Electricity cuts are frequent. The air smells faintly of antiseptic and dust. A nurse pushes a wheelchair through a narrow corridor, careful not to bump into the rows of IV stands. The hospital's head of rehabilitation explains that their mission is to restore independence, to help patients walk, sit, and perform daily tasks again. But the obstacles are immense. He says that the centre is crippled by shortages. Electronic equipment used in therapy is broken and cannot be repaired due to the blockade on spare parts. Assistive devices are nearly impossible to find. Some patients are discharged without the tools they need, one therapist admits. We send them home with advice and prayer because we simply don't have what they require. One of those patients is Mohammed Al-Masri, a 34-year-old from Gaza City who was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare autoimmune disorder that left him paralyzed from the neck down. When he first arrived at the hospital, he could barely move his hands. He recalls the helplessness vividly. "I couldn't carry a water gallon. My hands failed me," he says quietly. But after months of intensive therapy, Mohammed now walks on his own. He sits unaided, eats with his hands, and even helps other patients exercise. His recovery has become a symbol of perseverance in a place where recovery itself feels like defiance. Nearby, a mother named Salva sits beside her teenage son, Aram. He was shot while sleeping during an airstrike in Rafah. His spinal cord was damaged, leaving him unable to stand. Salva remembers the moment she realized something was terribly wrong. "I tried to have him stand, but he fell every time. He couldn't stand up. Then he told me, 'I can't stand up.' I started to look for why he was not able to stand up. Then I found out that he was injured in his neck, his spinal cord was damaged." For months, Aram could not move. Through a combination of physical therapy, occupational exercises, and psychological support, he has made slow progress. Today, he walks with the help of a metal walker. Each step is deliberate, shaky, but filled with determination. His therapists applaud him quietly as he crosses the room. His mother smiles through tears. "He used to run to school," she says. "Now he takes small steps. but at least they are his. Across Gaza, such stories are countless. The human toll of the war is not measured only in deaths, but in lives permanently altered. The number of amputations from bombings and collapsing buildings runs into the thousands. Surgeons in field hospitals have performed operations with minimal anesthesia and improvised tools. Many patients now depend on international aid groups for prosthetic limbs, mobility devices, and pain medication. But even with aid, the needs far exceed what can be provided. Doctors Without Borders reports that Gaza's rehabilitation network is operating at less than 30% capacity. Many rehabilitation specialists have been displaced, and several hospitals were bombed beyond repair. The blockade on materials has made reconstruction slow and erratic. Power cuts last up to 18 hours a day, disrupting everything from dialysis to physical therapy. Patients who rely on electrical devices such as breathing aids or neuromuscular stimulators live in constant fear of blackout. Despite this, Gaza's medical staff persist. Their resilience mirrors that of their patients. Every morning, therapists line up the patients for exercises. Some practice walking between parallel bars. Others learn to grip objects again. Children with leg braces laugh as they race their wheelchairs down narrow halls. Nurses cheer them on with smiles that hide exhaustion. Yet, as inspiring as these moments are, the reality remains grim. For every Mohammed or Aram who regains mobility, there are dozens whose prospects remain uncertain. Some were discharged too early, others return to destroyed neighborhoods where dust and rubble hinder recovery. The lack of clean water and nutrition further complicates healing. Many live without proper shelter, their therapy interrupted by displacement and hunger. A senior rehabilitation officer explains that Gaza's recovery must go beyond hospitals. We need community-based rehabilitation, he says. We must train families to provide care, create accessible housing, and restore public infrastructure so that disabled people can participate fully in society. But such plans require funding, coordination, and stability, three things Gaza currently lacks. The wider picture of Gaza's devastation is almost beyond comprehension. Satellite images show vast portions of the Strip flattened. 80% of the population has been displaced at least once. More than 90% of homes are damaged or destroyed. The United Nations calls the scale of the humanitarian crisis unprecedented in modern memory. Still, amid all this, hope glimmers in small acts. A nurse adjusting a child's wheelchair, a family sweeping the floor of a roofless home, a teacher reopening a classroom in a tent. Healing in Gaza has always been intertwined with resistance to despair, to silence, to erasure. The psychological scars, however, are deep. Every therapist in Gaza is also a trauma counselor. Children draw pictures of airplanes and funerals. Adults cry in therapy sessions, haunted by the loss of relatives. The WHO warns of a mental health catastrophe, with more than half of Gaza's population suffering from post-traumatic stress. Depression and anxiety are rampant, yet mental health services remain scarce. One doctor at Al-Attar Hospital says the most heartbreaking cases are those who survived the bombings but cannot reconcile with their survival. They ask why they lived when others didn't, he says. Physical wounds can heal, but psychological wounds are harder. The ceasefire, while a relief, is fragile. Israel's government insists that Hamas must fully disarm as part of the deal. Hamas rejects the condition, calling it politically impossible. Mediators from Qatar, Egypt and Turkey are trying to preserve the truce, but tensions remain high. For ordinary Gazans, politics is distant noise. Survival is the only agenda that matters. In the ruins of northern Gaza, a group of volunteers from local NGOs distribute food parcels and blankets. One of them, a young paramedic, says, "We used to save lives during bombings. Now we're trying to save dignity." His words sum up the shift in Gaza's struggle, from emergency survival to the long, grinding work of rebuilding. Internationally, the response has been uneven. Some nations have pledged billions in reconstruction aid. Others are hesitant, citing corruption risks or the fear of funds reaching militant groups. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency, itself battered by funding cuts, warns that unless reconstruction accelerates, Gaza's recovery will take decades. Beyond the immediate crisis, there's a question few dare to ask. What does healing mean when the wounds are collective? Streets, schools, hospitals, even memories all bear the imprint of war. For many Gazans, rebuilding isn't about returning to what was lost. It's about redefining what survival means. In neighborhoods where apartment blocks once stood, makeshift clinics have emerged. Therapists teach parents how to help children stretch their limbs, massage their muscles, and prevent atrophy. Elderly patients gather for group exercises under tarpaulins. These improvised centres serve as both hospitals and community hubs. We cannot wait for international aid to rebuild everything, one volunteer says. We must start healing ourselves. The stories of patients like Mohammed Al-Masri and Aram echo through these centres, offering fragile hope. Mohammed, now an unofficial mentor for new patients, tells them, "The body remembers how to fight." His determination inspires others to keep moving, even when the odds are impossible. The statistics tell one story, but the human voices tell another. Behind every number, every one of the 169,000 injured is a story of survival, pain, and endurance. Over 10,000 children will grow up with physical disabilities, yet many are already showing astonishing adaptability. In one rehabilitation unit, a young girl missing both legs is learning to draw with her toes. Her laughter fills the corridor, but optimism alone cannot rebuild Gaza. The scale of destruction means the recovery effort will require unprecedented coordination between local authorities, NGOs, and international partners. Hospitals must be reconstructed, electricity grids restored, and prosthetic production facilities established inside Gaza to meet growing demand. The challenge is not only medical, but infrastructural. Rehabilitation cannot occur in a city without roads or transport. For patients in wheelchairs, even travelling a few kilometres for therapy can take hours due to debris. Rebuilding must include accessibility, ramps, sidewalks, elevators, and public spaces designed for people with disabilities. Economically, Gaza faces collapse. Unemployment is above 80%. Factories that once produced goods now lie in ruins. Families who lost breadwinners are dependent on aid. Humanitarian agencies stress that physical rehabilitation must go hand in hand with economic reintegration, creating jobs, training programs, and micro grants for injured workers to rebuild livelihoods. And yet, amidst despair, there is resilience. In every shattered street, there are signs of life: children playing among ruins, vendors reopening stalls, the call to prayer echoing through broken minarets. Gaza has seen destruction before, but never on this scale. What makes this moment different is the sheer number of people starting again from nothing. International observers who have visited the Strip say the resilience of Gazans is unmatched. One delegate from the Red Cross said, "Everywhere you look, people are rebuilding, not just structures, but their sense of community." At sunset, the skyline of Gaza City glows red and gold. Amid the ruins, smoke rises from cooking fires. Families gather for evening meals, sharing bread and stories. Life goes on, imperfect and fragile, but undeniably present. Healing here is not measured by medical charts or political milestones. It is measured by the sight of a man taking his first step after months of paralysis, by a mother lifting her child into a wheelchair, by laughter returning to places once filled with screams. Still, the challenges ahead are immense. The physical rehabilitation of tens of thousands will require sustained effort, international support, and years of peace, something Gaza has rarely known. For many, the war's end is not the end of suffering, but the beginning of a different kind of endurance. As the night settles, power outages plunge entire districts into darkness. In hospitals, generators rumble weakly. Nurses check on patients by flashlight. In the distance, the sea crashes against the shore, the same sea that has carried aid ships and, for many Gazans, the dream of escape. For those who remain, rebuilding Gaza is more than a task. It is an act of defiance. Amid the rubble, amid grief and loss, a quiet determination persists. To walk again, to live again, to be whole again.